Dominic Archer stared at the woman across the candlelight, but he wasn't looking at his fiancée. His gaze was locked on a table 20 feet away, where his past had just walked in, wearing a dress that cost more than his car. The glass of vintage Merlot slipped from his fingers, shattering against the imported marble floor, silencing the entire restaurant. He didn't hear the crash. He only heard the blood rushing in his ears. Eunice, the woman he had discarded like yesterday's trash for being barren, was standing there radiating elegance. And she wasn't alone. She was visibly beautifully pregnant and holding the hand of the one man Dominic feared most in the business world. The atmosphere inside l'Orangerie was suffocatingly expensive. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto plates of food that cost more than a mortgage payment, and the air smelled of truffles and old money. For Dominic Archer, a man who had clawed his way into the city's elite circle through ruthless acquisitions and cold-blooded mergers. This was just another Tuesday. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke suit, trying to tune out the woman sitting opposite him. Sasha Banks was beautiful in the way a sports car was beautiful. Sleek, expensive, and loud. She was currently complaining about the waiter's inability to distinguish between sparkling and still water, her voice carrying just enough to be embarrassing. "Dominic, are you even listening to me?" Sasha snapped, tapping a manicured nail against her wine glass. "I said the wedding planner needs a deposit for the venue in Lake Como by Friday. You promised we'd finalize the guest list tonight." Dominic sighed, rubbing his temples. "I heard you, Sasha. Just book it. I don't care about the cost." "You never care," she huffed, finally picking up her menu. "That's why I love you. You know I saw that pathetic ex of yours the other day, Eunice, walking out of a discount grocery store. She looked terrible. I almost felt bad for her. Almost." Sasha laughed, a cruel tinkling sound that grated on Dominic's nerves. It had been 2 years since he divorced Eunice. 2 years since he threw her out of their penthouse because she couldn't give him the one thing his ego demanded an heir. Sasha had been the exciting distraction, then the secretary who listened, the one who whispered that Eunice was holding him back. Now Sasha was just another obligation. "Drop it, Sasha," Dominic muttered, taking a sip of his wine. "Eunice is in the past." "Is she?" Sasha smirked. "Because you still keep that old watch she gave you in your safe." Dominic opened his mouth to retort, but the words died in his throat. The heavy oak doors of the restaurant swung open, admitting a gust of cool evening air and a couple that instantly commanded the room's attention. The maitre d', usually a man of stoic composure, practically bowed as he rushed to greet them. The man was tall, with broad shoulders, clad in a suit that made Dominic's look off the rack. He had silver-streaked hair and a jawline that looked carved from granite. It was Gabriel Caldwell, the CEO of Caldwell Enterprises, the shark who had eaten 3 of Dominic's competitors for breakfast last quarter. Seeing Gabriel Caldwell in person was terrifying enough for a businessman of Dominic's tier, but it was the woman on his arm that made Dominic's heart stop. She wore a deep emerald velvet dress that hugged every curve, cascading to the floor in a shimmering wave. Her hair, once kept in a practical bun, now flowed in loose, glossy chestnut waves down her back. Diamonds, tasteful, but unmistakably authentic, glittered at her throat and ears. It was Eunice. Dominic blinked, sure he was hallucinating. But it was her. The curve of her cheek, the soft smile that used to greet him when he came home late. It was all there, but amplified. She looked radiant, powerful, and utterly untouchable. "No way," Sasha whispered, her fork clattering onto her plate. "Is that Is that the mouse? Eunice turned her head, laughing at something Gabriel whispered in her ear. The sound was melodic, free of the sadness that had plagued her during their final months together. As she turned, the velvet fabric of her dress pulled tight against her midsection. Dominic felt the blood drain from his face. The room seemed to tilt. She was pregnant. Heavily, undeniably pregnant. Impossible, Dominic choked out. The word tasted like ash. He had spent thousands on doctors. He had dragged her to specialists who told him his count was fine, implying the fault lay with her. He had screamed at her, called her broken, told her she was ending his bloodline. Yet there she was, glowing with life, her hand resting protectively over a baby bump that looked to be about 7 months along. And she was being guided to the best table in the house by Gabriel Caldwell, a man who looked at her not with disdain, but with a reverence Dominic had never shown her. "She's pregnant," Sasha hissed, her face contorted in jealousy. "That lying little—" "Shut up!" Dominic snapped, his voice trembling. He watched as Gabriel pulled out a chair for Eunice, placing a gentle kiss on her hand before she sat. The intimacy was casual, lived in. Dominic felt a sudden, violent urge to stand up, to march over there and demand answers. How, when, and why was she with him? Gabriel sat down, his cold blue eyes scanning the room. For a split second his gaze locked onto Dominic's. There was no recognition, only a dismissal so profound it felt like a physical blow. To Gabriel Caldwell, Dominic Archer was insignificant. "Waiter!" Dominic shouted too loudly. Heads turned. He didn't care. "Another bottle. Now." He needed to be drunk. He needed to forget that the woman he discarded for being barren was currently carrying a billionaire's child a few tables away. But as the waiter poured, Dominic couldn't tear his eyes away. He was watching his biggest mistake unfold in real time, and the night had only just begun. The vintage wine tasted like vinegar to Dominic. Every time Eunice laughed, a joyous, full-bodied sound he hadn't heard in years, it triggered a memory he had tried desperately to bury. 2 years ago. A Tuesday just like this one. The rain had been hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse. Dominic remembered the sound of the thunder masking Eunice's sobbing. He had been standing by the fireplace, a glass of scotch in hand, looking at the divorce papers on the coffee table. "Please, Dom!" Eunice had begged, her voice cracking. She was kneeling on the rug, her eyes red and swollen. "We can try again. The doctor said it's stress. If we just take a break, go on a vacation." "I don't have time for vacations, Eunice," Dominic had replied coldly, not even turning to look at her. "And I don't have time for a wife who can't fulfill her basic duties. I need a legacy. You are giving me nothing but excuses." "I love you," she had whispered, reaching for his hand. He had pulled away as if she were contagious. "Love doesn't build empires. I have investors asking about my succession plan. I have Sasha helping me with the mergers while you sit here and cry over negative tests. I'm done, Eunice. I want you out tonight." "Tonight? But it's pouring. I have nowhere to go." "Take the settlement check. Check into a hotel, I don't care. Just be gone before I get back from the office tomorrow." He remembered the look in her eyes then. The light had gone out. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't thrown things. She had simply stood up, wiped her face, and walked into the bedroom to pack. He had left to spend the night at Sasha's apartment, feeling justified. He was a king. He needed a queen, not a broken vessel. Now sitting in l'orangerie, Dominic watched Gabriel Caldwell lean across the table to tuck a stray lock of hair behind Eunice's ear. The tenderness in the gesture made Dominic's stomach churn. "Stop staring at them," Sasha hissed, kicking him under the table. "You're making a scene. Besides, she probably trapped him. That's what women like her do. It's probably not even his. Gabriel Caldwell doesn't get trapped, Sasha." Dominic murmured, his voice hollow. "He's the most calculating man in New York. If he's with her, it's because he wants to be." "Well, look at her," Sasha sneered, slicing into her steak with unnecessary force. "She's fat. Pregnancy ruins your figure. You're lucky you dodged that bullet." Dominic looked at Sasha. Really looked at her. Her makeup was flawless, her dress was trendy, and her body was surgically enhanced to perfection. But her eyes were empty. There was no warmth, no depth, just a hunger for status. Then he looked back at Eunice. She was glowing. There was a softness to her, a serenity that made her the most beautiful thing in the room. She was speaking to the waiter, pointing at the menu, and then looking at Gabriel for confirmation. Gabriel nodded, smiling, and placed his hand over hers on the table. Dominic realized with a jolt of horror that he was jealous, not just of the money or the power Gabriel held, but of the peace. He had thrown Eunice out into the rain to find happiness, and instead he had found Sasha and a life of constant, shallow noise. And Eunice. She had found a king. "I need to go to the restroom," Dominic said abruptly, standing up. "Dominic, sit down," Sasha demanded. "I said I need a minute." He snapped loud enough for the nearby tables to quiet down again. He turned and walked toward the back of the restaurant, his legs feeling heavy. He needed cold water on his face. He needed to wake up from this nightmare. As he pushed open the door to the opulent restroom area, he nearly collided with someone coming out. It was Gabriel Caldwell. Dominic froze. Up close, the man was even more imposing. He smelled of sandalwood and power. Gabriel adjusted his cufflinks, glancing at Dominic with mild disinterest. He moved to step around him, but Dominic, fueled by liquid courage and wounded pride, stepped in his path. "Caldwell," Dominic said, his voice trying for authority, but landing on desperation. Gabriel stopped. He looked down at Dominic, his expression unreadable. "Do I know you?" The insult burned. They had been in the same room at 3 charity galas. Dominic had sent him proposals. Dominic Archer, Archer Global. "Ah," Gabriel said the name, clearly meaning nothing to him. "Excuse me, Mr. Archer. My wife is waiting." Wife. The word was a dagger. Dominic stepped back, stunned. "Wife, you married her." Gabriel's eyes narrowed slightly, the temperature in the hallway dropping 10 degrees. "Eunice, yes, 6 months ago. Is that a problem?" "She's my ex-wife," Dominic blurted out. It was a stupid thing to say. A weak claim to a territory he had abandoned. Gabriel's expression shifted. The indifference vanished, replaced by a cold, predatory sharpness. He took a slow step toward Dominic. "I know exactly who you are, Mr. Archer. Eunice told me everything." Dominic swallowed hard. She did. She told me about the doctors, the screaming, the night you put her on the street in a thunderstorm." Gabriel's voice was low, terrifyingly calm. "I have to thank you, actually." Dominic blinked. "Thank me. If you hadn't been such a colossal fool," Gabriel said, a dark smile playing on his lips, "I never would have met the love of my life, and I wouldn't be expecting my son and daughter in 2 months." "Son and twins," Dominic whispered. "Twins," Gabriel confirmed. "Naturally conceived. Turns out, Mr. Archer Eunice was never the one with the fertility issue. It's amazing what happens when a woman is treated with love instead of stress. Or perhaps the problem was simply you." Dominic felt like he had been punched in the gut. "Now," Gabriel said, brushing a speck of imaginary dust off Dominic's shoulder. "Stay away from my table. If you upset her, or if that banshee you're dining with so much as looks at Eunice the wrong way, I will buy your company by tomorrow morning and liquidate it by noon. Enjoy your dinner." Gabriel walked away, leaving Dominic standing alone in the hallway, shaking. Dominic remained in the hallway for 5 minutes, breathing heavily. Twins. She was having twins, and he, Dominic, was likely the one who had been infertile all along. The irony was a poison in his veins. He had blamed her, shamed her, and discarded her only for another man to reap the blessings he had so desperately wanted. He splashed cold water on his face in the restroom, trying to compose himself. "I will buy your company by tomorrow morning." It wasn't an idle threat. Gabriel Caldwell had the liquidity to crush Archer Global without breaking a sweat. Dominic had to be careful. He had to go back out there, pay the bill, and leave. But when he exited the restroom, he saw a sight that made his blood run cold. Sasha was not at their table. Panic flared in his chest. He scanned the room and saw the back of Sasha's red dress. She was standing right next to Gabriel and Eunice's table. "Oh no," Dominic muttered, breaking into a brisk walk. Sasha had a glass of red wine in her hand and a swaying, intoxicated stance. She was looking down at Eunice with a sneer that twisted her beautiful features into something ugly. "So," Sasha's voice carried across the hushed restaurant. "It is you. I thought they didn't let charity cases into l'orangerie." Eunice looked up from her plate. She didn't flinch. She didn't look scared. She looked at Sasha with a calm, pitying expression that infuriated the mistress. "Hello, Sasha," Eunice said smoothly. "You look tired." "Tired?" Sasha laughed shrilly. "I'm living the life you couldn't handle, sweetie. I'm with Dominic. I'm the one getting the diamonds. You're just some knocked-up gold digger who found a sugar daddy to pay the bills." The entire restaurant had gone silent. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. The maitre d' was rushing over, looking frantic. Gabriel began to stand his face a mask of thunder, but Eunice placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. She looked up at Sasha, her eyes hardening. "Sasha," Eunice said, her voice clear and steady. "I'm dining with my husband. I'm pregnant with our children. And I'm wearing a dress that you couldn't afford, even if you sold everything you own. I suggest you walk away before you embarrass yourself further." "Embarrass myself?" Sasha scoffed. "You think you're better than me. You're a reject. Dominic threw you out. He told me you were cold, boring, and barren." "And yet," Eunice said, gesturing to her belly, "here I am, creating life, while you are simply creating a scene." Sasha's face turned crimson. In a fit of drunken rage, she raised her hand, the glass of red wine poised to splash over Eunice's pristine velvet dress. "Oops," Sasha sneered, tilting the glass. "Sasha, no!" Dominic shouted, lunging forward, but he was too late. Or so he thought. Before the wine could leave the glass, a hand shot out and gripped Sasha's wrist with a vice-like grip. It wasn't Dominic. It wasn't Gabriel. It was Eunice. She had moved with a speed that belied her pregnancy. She caught Sasha's wrist in mid-air, twisting it sharply. Sasha shrieked, dropping the glass. It fell onto the table, but since it hadn't tipped the wine, only splashed onto the tablecloth and onto Sasha's own shoes. "Let go of me!" Sasha screamed. Eunice stood up slowly, still holding Sasha's wrist. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper that only Sasha Gabriel and the approaching Dominic could hear. "I am not the woman who cried in the rain anymore. Sasha," Eunice hissed, "I am Mrs. Caldwell, and if you ever try to touch me or my family again, I won't just ruin your shoes. I will ensure you never set foot in this city again." She released Sasha's wrist with a shove. Sasha stumbled back right into Dominic's chest. "Get her out of here, Archer," Gabriel said, not even standing up. He picked up his napkin and dabbed a drop of wine from the table, looking utterly bored. "Before I call security." Dominic gripped Sasha's arm, his face burning with humiliation. Everyone was staring. The elite of the city were whispering behind their hands. "Let's go," Dominic ground out. "But she threatened me," Sasha wailed. "Move!" Dominic dragged her toward the exit, passing the maitre d', who looked ready to ban them for life. As they reached the door, Dominic looked back one last time. Eunice had sat back down. Gabriel was kissing her temple, whispering something that made her smile. They had already forgotten about him. Dominic pushed through the doors into the cold night air. The image of Eunice's happiness burned into his retinas. He had lost. He had lost everything that mattered, and he was stuck with the screeching woman beside him. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done with Dominic Archer yet. The night had only been a prelude. The real destruction of his life was scheduled for Monday morning. The weekend passed in a blur of arguments and whiskey for Dominic. Sasha wouldn't stop complaining about her assault at the restaurant, demanding Dominic sue Eunice, sue Gabriel. Sue the restaurant. She didn't understand the precipice upon which they stood. Dominic did. He spent Sunday in his home office, staring at the stock market reports, praying that Gabriel Caldwell was a man who made idle threats. He wasn't. Monday morning arrived with a grey, oppressive drizzle that reminded Dominic of the night he kicked Eunice out. He walked into the headquarters of Archer Global at 8:00 a.m. sharp. The glass and steel skyscraper usually hummed with the energy of commerce. Today it felt like a funeral home. Mr. Archer, his personal assistant, a young man named Timothy, who usually looked like he'd slept in his suit, came running up to him. He was pale. "Sir, you need to see the news, and the board is calling an emergency meeting in 10 minutes. "Calm down, Timothy," Dominic snapped, handing him his wet umbrella. "What news? What is the board panicking about now?" Timothy didn't speak. He just pointed to the giant flat-screen TV mounted in the lobby, usually tuned to Bloomberg. The headline was in bold red letters, "Caldwell Enterprises acquires majority stake in Archer Global Suppliers. Hostile takeover rumored." Dominic felt the floor drop out from under him. He marched to the elevator, ignoring the whispers of the employees he passed. "Get the legal team in the conference room. Now," he barked. Up on the 40th floor, the atmosphere was chaotic. Lawyers were shouting into phones, and the board members were pacing like caged tigers. When Dominic entered the room, went silent. "What is going on?" Dominic demanded, throwing his briefcase onto the mahogany table. "It's Caldwell," said Marcus Thorne, the company's CFO, a man Dominic usually trusted, though right now he looked ready to jump out the window. "At 4:00 a.m. this morning, Caldwell Enterprises bought out the debt of our 3 biggest suppliers in China and Mexico. They effectively own our supply chain." That's illegal," Dominic stammered. "Antitrust laws." "It's perfectly legal," the head counsel sighed. "He used shell companies. We didn't see it coming. But that's not the worst part. What could possibly be worse? He's calling in the debt," Marcus said, loosening his tie. "Immediately. If we don't pay $40 million by close of business today, he shuts down our production lines. We'll be in breach of contract with every client we have." Dominic sank into his chair. "He's strangling us." "Why?" one of the board members asked. "Why us? Why now Caldwell has never shown interest in mid-sized logistics firms before?" Dominic knew why. He closed his eyes and saw Eunice's face. "If you upset her, I will buy your company by tomorrow morning." "Get him on the phone," Dominic whispered. "Who?" "Gabriel Caldwell. Get him on the phone," Dominic roared. 10 minutes later, the speakerphone in the center of the table beeped. "Mr. Archer," came the smooth, deep voice of Gabriel Caldwell. It sounded like he was calling from a yacht, relaxed and unbothered. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I assume you saw the morning news." "You can't do this, Caldwell," Dominic said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "You're destroying thousands of jobs. This is personal and you know it." "Business is always personal, Dominic," Gabriel replied. "But you're mistaken. I'm not destroying jobs. I'm merely restructuring a failing asset. Archer Global has been mismanaged for years. You've been focused on distractions. I'm just cleaning up the mess." "I want a meeting," Dominic demanded. "Face to face." "I'm afraid I'm busy," Gabriel said. "My wife has a prenatal appointment today. We're going to see the twins on the ultrasound. Much more important than listening to you beg." "Please," Dominic said the word tasting like bile. "Gabriel, don't destroy my life because of a dinner argument." There was a pause on the line. "It wasn't just a dinner argument, Dominic." Gabriel's voice dropped, becoming steel-hard. "It was 2 years of torture you put that woman through. It was the gaslighting, the cruelty. You broke her. I spent 6 months putting the pieces back together. Consider this the bill for repairs." "What do you want?" Dominic asked, defeated. "I want your resignation," Gabriel said simply. "Step down as CEO. Hand over your voting rights to the board. If you do, I'll restructure the debt and keep the company afloat. The employees keep their jobs. You walk away with your golden parachute and never set foot in this industry again. And if I refuse, then I foreclose at 500 p.m. The company goes bankrupt. Your stock options become worthless. You lose everything. The house, the cars, the mistress, everything." The boardroom was silent. Every eye was on Dominic. "You have 1 hour," Gabriel said. The line went dead. Dominic stared at the phone. He looked at the board members. They weren't looking at him with loyalty. They were looking at him like he was a cancer that needed to be cut out to save the body. "Dominic," Marcus said softly, "we can't pay the 40 million. You have to do it." Dominic stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. He had built this. He had sacrificed his marriage, his happiness, his morality for this view. And now the woman he had deemed useless was the reason he was losing it all. "Fine," Dominic whispered. "Draw up the papers." 6 months later. Dominic Archer sat in a small, dingy apartment in Queens. The wallpaper was peeling and the radiator clanked incessantly. It was a far cry from the penthouse overlooking Central Park. He poured himself a glass of cheap vodka. It was 11:00 a.m. After the forced resignation, things had unraveled quickly. The golden parachute Gabriel had promised had been significantly smaller than expected after legal fees and hidden clauses were activated. Then came Sasha. As soon as the money dried up, so did her love. She hadn't even packed her bags. She just left a note saying she needed space and was moving to Miami with a club promoter she met on Instagram. Dominic didn't chase her. He didn't have the energy. He had tried to start over. He applied for consulting gigs, executive positions at smaller firms. But the name Caldwell was a brand that covered the entire industry. No one would hire the man who had crossed Gabriel Caldwell. He was blacklisted. Dominic took a swig of the vodka, grimacing at the burn. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a notification from a news app. He had tried to delete them all, but morbid curiosity kept him re-downloading them. Billionaire CEO Gabriel Caldwell and wife Eunice welcome twin heirs. Dominic's thumb hovered over the link. He shouldn't click it. He knew it would hurt. But he tapped it anyway. The photo showed Gabriel and Eunice leaving the hospital. Eunice looked tired but radiant, holding a pink bundle. Gabriel was holding a blue one, looking down at his wife with a pride that transcended financial success. They looked like a family, a real unbreakable unit. Dominic threw the phone across the room. It cracked against the wall, but the screen stayed on, glowing in the dim light. "That should have been me," he yelled at the empty room. "Those should have been my kids." But the silence that answered him was heavy, with the truth he finally had to admit. It never would have been him, because he never loved Eunice. He loved what she could do for him. He loved her as a function, not a person. Gabriel loved her soul. That was the difference. That was why Gabriel had everything and Dominic had nothing. A knock on the door startled him. He wasn't expecting anyone. He owed rent, but the landlord usually came on Fridays. Dominic stumbled to the door and opened it. Standing there was a man in a sharp black suit. He held a thick manila envelope. "Mr. Archer." "Yeah." Dominic grunted. "Who wants to know?" "I'm a representative for the Caldwell Family Trust," the man said. Dominic stiffened. "Here to gloat or kick me while I'm down?" "Neither," the man said. He held out the envelope. "Mrs. Caldwell asked me to deliver this to you." Dominic stared at the envelope. "Eunice sent this." "She did. Have a good day, Mr. Archer." The man turned and walked away down the graffiti-stained hallway. Dominic took the envelope inside his hands, trembling. Was it a restraining order? A lawsuit? He sat on the lumpy couch and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a cashier's check. Dominic looked at the check first. It was for $500,000. His breath caught in his throat. This was enough to start over. To move to a different city. Maybe start a small business. It was a lifeline. He unfolded the letter. It was handwritten in Eunice's elegant script. "Dominic, I know you've lost the company. I know Sasha left. I know you are angry. Gabriel wanted to crush you completely. He wanted to make sure you never got up again. But I asked him to stop. Not because I still love you, that part of me died the night you locked me out in the rain, but because I remember the man you used to be before the money consumed you. The man who used to bring me flowers on Tuesdays, for no reason. I mourn him, even if he doesn't exist anymore. I don't want your suffering on my conscience. I have everything I ever wanted now. I have love, and I have my children. I don't need revenge. Hate is too heavy a burden to carry when you're holding 2 babies. Take this money. Go somewhere new. Be someone better. Find a woman, and love her for who she is, not what she can give you. This is the last time you will ever hear from me. Eunice. Dominic read the letter twice, then a third time. Tears, hot and unfamiliar, pricked his eyes. She pitied him. The woman he had called weak had just shown more strength in one letter than he had shown in his entire life. She had the power to finish him, and she chose mercy. He looked at the check. It was freedom, but it was also a final goodbye. Dominic put his head in his hands and wept. For the lost empire, yes. But mostly for the realization that he had held a diamond in his hands and thrown it away because he thought it was just a rock. 5 years later. The salt air of the Oregon coast was crisp and clean. Dominic wiped his hands on a rag grease staining his overalls. He stepped out of the small garage he now owned, Archer's Auto Repair. It wasn't a skyscraper. He didn't wear Italian suits. He had calluses on his hands and oil under his fingernails. But he slept at night. He had taken Eunice's money and moved as far away as he could without leaving the country. He bought a failing garage in a small coastal town, fixed it up, and learned to work with his hands. It was hard work, honest work. No board meetings, no lying to investors. Just fixing things that were broken. "Hey, Dom." Dominic looked up. A woman was walking toward the garage holding a picnic basket. It was Sarah, the local librarian. She wasn't a supermodel. She wore glasses, had laugh lines around her eyes, and her hair was a frizzy mess in the humidity. Dominic thought she was beautiful. "Hey, Sarah." He smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "Lunch break." "I made sandwiches," she said, setting the basket on the bench outside the shop. "And I brought that book you wanted to read, the biography of Churchill." "You're a lifesaver," he said, kissing her cheek. They sat on the bench eating turkey sandwiches and watching the grey ocean waves crash against the cliffs. "You seem quiet today," Sarah said, bumping his shoulder. "Everything okay?" Dominic took a bite of his sandwich. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. On the screen was a picture from a business magazine. It was a "Where Are They Now" segment on the top CEOs of the decade. There was a picture of Gabriel and Eunice. They were older now. Gabriel had grey at his temples, and Eunice had laugh lines. They were standing with 2 5-year-old children, a boy and a girl, at the opening of a new pediatric hospital wing they had funded. "Yeah," Dominic said, looking at the photo. "I'm okay. Just saw an old friend in the paper." "Oh, someone you knew in New York." "Someone I used to know," Dominic corrected. "She looks happy." "That's good," Sarah said. "Everyone deserves to be happy." "Yeah," Dominic said, turning off the phone and putting it away. "They do." He looked at Sarah. He didn't have millions. He didn't have a legacy of power. But he had this bench. He had this sandwich. And he had a woman who looked at him like he was a person, not a bank account. "Ready for the town hall meeting tonight?" Sarah asked. "Wouldn't miss it," Dominic said. "I have to argue about those potholes on Main Street again." Sarah laughed. It was a good sound. Dominic realized he didn't miss the view from the 40th floor. The view from here was just fine. He had learned the hardest lesson of his life, but he had learned it. Eunice was right. Love didn't build empires of steel and glass. It built lives. "Come on," Dominic said, standing up and offering Sarah his hand. "Let's close up early. I want to take a walk on the beach." "Really? Mr. Workaholic wants to leave early." "I'm not that guy anymore," Dominic said softly. He took her hand, and they walked toward the water, leaving the ghosts of New York on the other side of the continent. Peace, Dominic discovered, was fragile. It was like the antique engines he fixed in his garage, easily disrupted by a single grain of sand. For 3 years his life in the coastal town of Astoria had been quiet. He and Sarah were living together in a small cottage. He had almost forgotten the sound of high heels clicking on marble floors. Almost. It was a Tuesday afternoon, grey and blustery, typical for the Oregon coast. Dominic was under the hood of a '69 Mustang wrestling with a carburetor when a shadow fell across the concrete floor of the garage. "You're hard to find, Dominic. I ruined a pair of Louboutins walking through this mud." The voice was like a cold finger running down his spine. Dominic froze. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag and slowly stood up. Standing in the entryway of Archer's Auto Repair was Sasha Banks. She looked different, and not in a good way. The glamour was still there, but it was brittle. Her makeup was a little too heavy, trying to hide lines of stress. Her designer coat looked a few seasons old, something the old Sasha would have burned rather than wear. "Sasha," Dominic said, his voice flat. "What are you doing here? Is that how you greet an old flame?" She stepped gingerly over a puddle of oil, wrinkling her nose at the smell of gasoline and rust. "I heard you went native. I didn't realize you went peasant. I'm working Sasha. If you don't have a car to fix, get out." "Oh, I have something to fix," she said, her eyes gleaming with a familiar, dangerous light. "I have a situation, and you're the only one who can help me. And trust me, Dom, you want to help me. Unless you want to rot in this grease pit forever." Dominic crossed his arms. "I'm happy here." "Don't lie to me," she scoffed. "You're Dominic Archer. You crave power like a shark craves blood. You're just hiding because you got beat. But I found a way to win. I found the weapon to take down Gabriel Caldwell." Dominic felt a jolt of alarm. "Leave them alone, Sasha. It's over." "It's not over," she hissed, dropping the facade of boredom. Desperation leaked into her voice. "Look at this." She pulled a folded document from her purse. It looked official. Old. "What is it?" "I've been digging," Sasha said, pacing the small garage. "After I left you, I dated a lawyer who used to work for Caldwell's father. He had files, archived files that were supposed to be shredded." She shoved the paper into Dominic's chest. "Read it." Dominic hesitated, then unfolded the paper. It was a property deed transfer from 20 years ago, signed by Gabriel's late father. "So?" Dominic asked. "It's land." "It's not just land, you idiot," Sasha whispered feverishly. "It's the land the main Caldwell factory sits on in Ohio, the factory that produces their microchips. The deed was transferred illegally. The signature is forged. If this gets out, the EPA shuts them down their stock tanks and they lose billions in government contracts. It destroys his legacy." Dominic looked at the paper. It was dynamite. In the hands of a rival, this could ruin Gabrielle. "Why bring this to me?" Dominic asked. "Because I need a face," Sasha said. "I can't approach them. They have restraining orders against me. But you know business. You can approach Gabriel. We don't leak it. We sell it back to him. Blackmail Dominic for $50 million. We split it 25 each. You can leave this dump by an island and be a king again." Dominic looked at Sasha, then at the paper, then around his small, cluttered garage. He saw the calendar on the wall with Sarah's handwriting, marking their anniversary dinner next week. He saw the photos of the classic cars he had restored. $50 million, Dominic repeated. "Think about it," Sasha urged, stepping closer, her hand on his arm. "No more grease, no more rain. Just us, the money and revenge. He humiliated us, Dom. He made us look like fools. This is justice." For a moment, the old Dominic woke up. The temptation was a physical ache. to see the fear in Gabriel's eyes, to hold the power again, to buy his way back into the world that had rejected him. It would be so easy. "I need to make a call," Dominic said quietly. Sasha smiled a predatory grin. "I knew you were still in there. Make the call. I'll wait in the car." Dominic walked into the small office at the back of the garage. He closed the door and picked up the phone. His hand hovered over the keypad. He looked through the dirty window at Sasha, who was checking her makeup in the side mirror of her rental car. He dialed. But he didn't dial a bank. He didn't dial a lawyer. He dialed a number he had memorized from the letter 5 years ago, a number he promised never to use. "Caldwell Residence," a crisp voice answered. "This is Dominic Archer," he said, his voice steady. "Don't hang up. I need to speak to Gabriel. It's about a blackmail plot against your company." There was a silence, then a series of clicks. "Archer." Gabriel's voice came on the line. It was deeper, older, but just as commanding. "You have 30 seconds before I trace this call and send the police." "You don't need to trace it," Dominic said. "I'm in Astoria, Oregon. Sasha Banks is here. She has a forged deed regarding your Ohio factory. She wants me to help her extort you for $50 million. Gabriel was silent for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she's waiting outside for me to say yes," Dominic said, looking at the photo of Sarah on his desk. "And I need you to send the police to pick her up. The document is in my hand. I'm going to burn it." "You're turning down $25 million?" Gabriel asked, skepticism coloring his tone. "I'm buying my freedom," Dominic replied. "I paid a high price for my soul, Gabriel. I'm not selling it back." "Keep her there," Gabriel said. "Sheriff is on the way." Dominic hung up. He walked back out to the garage bay. He found a metal bucket, threw the deed inside, and lit a match. "Dominic!" Sasha shrieked, running in from the car. "What are you doing?" "Ending it," Dominic said, dropping the match. The paper curled into black ash. "You fool, you idiot!" Sasha screamed, clawing at him. "We could have been rich!" Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. Sasha froze. She looked at Dominic, betrayal written all over her face. "You called them," she whispered. "Go, Sasha," Dominic said sadly. "Run. Maybe you can get away before they get here. But don't ever come back." Sasha looked at the approaching lights, spat on the floor at Dominic's feet, and scrambled into her car. She peeled out of the lot, tires screeching. Dominic watched her go. He didn't know if the police would catch her, and he didn't care. He watched the ashes of the blackmail scheme drift away in the wind. He felt lighter than he had in years. 10 more years passed. Dominic was 60 now. His hair was entirely white, and he moved a little slower, his knees complaining on the damp mornings. Archer's Auto Repair was now Archer & Sons, though he had no sons. He had hired 2 local teenagers from troubled homes to apprentice with him, teaching them how to fix cars, and more importantly, how to be men of integrity. Sarah had passed away 2 years prior from a sudden stroke. It had nearly broken him again, but the community had rallied around him. He realized then that he wasn't alone. He was loved. Not for his money, but for who he was. One stormy November night, the rain was lashing down in sheets, turning the coastal highway into a treacherous river. Dominic was closing up shop when he heard the horrific crunch of metal on metal nearby. He grabbed his first aid kit and a flashlight, running out into the storm. 100 yards down the road, a sleek, expensive sports car had hydroplaned and wrapped itself around a telephone pole. Steam hissed from the engine. Dominic pried the driver's side door open. The airbag had deployed. The driver was young, maybe 21. He was bleeding from a gash on his forehead, unconscious. Dominic worked quickly. He checked for a pulse, strong but rapid. He smelled smoke. "Hey, kid, wake up!" Dominic shouted over the wind. The young man groaned, his eyes fluttering open. They were blue, piercing, familiar blue eyes. My sister," the boy gasped, trying to turn his head. "Is she okay?" Dominic looked to the passenger seat. A young woman was slumped over. He ran to the other side, wrenching the door open. She was awake, terrified, clutching her arm. We skidded," she cried. "It's okay." Dominic said, his voice calm and authoritative. "I'm going to get you out. The car is smoking." He helped the girl out first, draping his heavy coat over her shoulders. Then he went back for the boy. He dragged him free just moments before the engine block flared flames, licking up the windshield. He got them into the dry safety of his garage office. He gave them towels and hot tea while they waited for the ambulance. "Thank you," the boy said, shivering. He looked at Dominic. "You saved our lives. I'm Leo. This is Sophia." Dominic froze. He looked closely at the boy. The jawline, the eyes. Then he looked at the girl. The chestnut hair, the shape of her nose. Leo and Sophia. The twins. "You're not from around here," Dominic said, his voice trembling slightly. "No," Sophia said. "We're from New York. We were taking a road trip up the coast. Our parents. They're going to kill us. This was our dad's car." "Your dad is Gabriel Caldwell," Dominic stated. It wasn't a question. Leo looked surprised. "Yeah. How did you know?" "I knew him. A long time ago," Dominic said. He turned away to pour more water into the kettle, hiding his face. The ambulance arrived along with the local sheriff. As the paramedics loaded the twins onto stretchers, Leo grabbed Dominic's hand. "Sir, wait. What's your name?" "My dad. He'll want to thank you. He's flying in as soon as we call him." Dominic looked at the young man. He saw Eunice in his kindness. He saw Gabriel in his strength. "Tell him." Dominic paused. He could tell them. He could reunite. He could get the validation he had craved for so long. But he shook his head. "Tell him it was just a mechanic," Dominic said softly. "Just a man doing his job. No name is necessary." Leo frowned, confused, but nodded. "Thank you." "Really?" The ambulance doors closed. Dominic stood in the rain, watching them drive away. 2 days later, a black town car pulled up to the garage. Dominic was sanding a fender. He didn't look up. He knew who it was. Gabriel Caldwell stepped out. He was old now, using a cane, but still imposing. He walked into the garage, looking around at the tools, the oil stains, the simple life. "They told me a mechanic saved them," Gabriel said. "But when they described him, white hair, stubborn, wouldn't give a name. I had a suspicion." Dominic put down the sander. "They're good kids, Gabriel. You did a good job." "Eunice raised them well," Gabriel said. He stepped closer. "And they are of because of you. The police said the car exploded 2 minutes later. You pulled them out of the fire. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Gabriel said. "You did what a good man would do." The two men stood in silence. 30 years of history, of hatred, of rivalry hung between them. But the venom was gone. Time had washed it away, like the tide washing the beach clean. "Eunice wanted to come," Gabriel said, "but she was too emotional. She sent this." He placed a small box on the workbench. I don't want money, Gabriel. It's not money. Gabriel turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. You know, Dominic, for a long time I hated you. But today I am just grateful you exist. Goodbye. Gabriel got in the car and left. Dominic opened the box. Inside was the old watch, the one Sasha had mocked so long ago, the one Eunice had given him when they were first married, the one he had kept in his safe. He had left it behind into New York when he lost everything. There was a note attached. It was broken when we found it in your office years ago. I had it fixed. It keeps perfect time now. Just like you. Dominic put the watch on his wrist. The weight of it felt familiar, but not heavy. It felt like forgiveness. He walked out of the garage, flipped the sign to "closed," and walked down to the beach to watch the sunset. The waves crashed, the sun dipped below the horizon, and for the first time in his life, Dominic Archer was exactly where he was meant to be. Dominic's journey from a billionaire blinded by greed to a humble mechanic who found redemption serves as a powerful reminder that our legacy isn't defined by what we own, but by who we are. He lost an empire to find his soul, and in the end, the very children he once disdained became the lives he saved. It teaches us that karma isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about being given a second chance to do the right thing when it matters most. What did you think of Dominic's transformation? Do you think he deserved forgiveness after how he treated Eunice, or was his life of solitude enough punishment? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice, redemption, and twists, please smash that like button. Share this video with a friend who loves drama and subscribe to our channel for more stories just like this one. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload.